I don't think anyone is surprised that Democrats have not reacted well to the idea that President Trump will nominate a third Supreme Court justice. After all, overreacting to Republican nominees is pretty much the Democrats' stock in trade. It doesn't matter who the nominee is, to hear the Democrats tell it, any Republican nominee is likely to bring about Armageddon. The fact that some Republican nominees in past years, and as recently as this past June, have sided with the liberal wing of the court more often than I would like, has not in any way restrained Democrats' hysteria each time a new Republican nominee is introduced. I thought we'd reached a low point 2 years ago with the nomination of Justice Kavanaugh, who suffered months of character assassination at the hands of Democrats. But it turns out that was not the low point, because we've reached a new low. As I said, Madam President, it's no surprise that Democrats have reacted with hysteria at the prospect of President Trump nominating another Supreme Court justice. It was disappointing, but hardly surprising, that yesterday the Democrat leader blocked a key Intelligence Committee hearing on election security, a topic he has repeatedly insisted is of overwhelming importance, to protest the thought of the Senate fulfilling its advice and consent role in confirming a principled conservative woman. Even Speaker Pelosi's overwrought statement that Republicans are, and I quote, "coming after your children," end quote, seemed pretty much par for the course. But Democrats have not limited themselves to temper tantrums. No, Democrats have moved on to threats. Dare to confirm the president's duly nominated nominee, Democrats are now saying, and if we win back the majority in November, we will eliminate the legislative filibuster and pack the Supreme Court. In other words, if Republicans dare to fulfill the Senate's role of advising and consenting to the president's nominee, Democrats will upend our democratic institutions. They will eliminate the legislative filibuster, which is the Senate rule that helps ensure that legislation that passes the Senate has to be at least somewhat bipartisan. And they will pack the Supreme Court. For those who need a brief refresher on the concept of court packing, which has been largely consigned to the dustbin of history nearly a century ago, the theory is as follows. If the Supreme Court is not deciding cases to your liking, add more justices to the court until you start getting the decisions that you want. In other words, let Republicans dare to fill the vacant slot on the Supreme Court, and Democrats will keep adding justices to the court until they can be assured that they will get the outcome that they want in every case. Madam President, yesterday I referred to those threats from Democrats as undemocratic. Why did I say that? Well, because they're inconsistent with democratic government. In our system of government, Madam President, you win some and you lose some. And while it's no fun when you lose, that's how things sometimes go in a democracy. Have Republicans been enthusiastic when Democrat presidents have had nominees confirmed to the Supreme Court? No. But have Republicans suggested that Democrat Supreme Court justices are illegitimate? Have we suggested that the proper response to a Democrat Supreme Court nominee is to pack the Supreme Court with additional Republican justices to get a rubber stamp for Republican priorities? No. Of course not, Madam President. Because while we may not like it when Democrats are in charge, we know that Democrat-run government is legitimate, just as Republican-run government is legitimate. But it's become clear over the past few years, and especially over the past few days, that Democrats only think government is legitimate when they're in charge. And so Democrats are accusing Republicans of undermining our institutions by fulfilling our constitutional role. Because that's exactly, Madam President, what we are doing, fulfilling our constitutional role. Let's be very clear about that. Republicans are suggesting that we take up a Supreme Court nominee duly nominated by a duly elected president and confirm that nominee in accord with our constitutional advice and consent role. Democrats are free to think that Republicans should not consider this nominee, but it is absolutely indisputable, Madam President, the Republicans and the President are doing nothing more than carrying out a legitimate constitutional prerogative. What Democrats are doing, on the other hand, trying to ensure that only one party has a say in our government, what some might call tyranny, and threatening retribution for the exercise of legitimate constitutional prerogatives. Now, that does pose a danger to our institutions. Take the Supreme Court. A year ago, several Democrats warned that the court's nonpartisan reputation was in jeopardy. Their argument that the court would look partisan if it didn't continue with the case that Democrats didn't like. What on earth do Democrats think will happen to the court's reputation if they pack the court with additional Democrats to rubber stamp their policies? Do they really think Americans are going to see the Supreme Court as legitimate once it's been hijacked for partisan Democratic purposes? Madam President, if you believe in our system of government, you have to believe that all Americans, not just those who agree with you, have a right to have a voice in the government. You're free to vehemently disagree with 50% of your fellow Americans. You're free to dislike it when your party's not in charge. You're free to fight fiercely for the policies and candidates that you believe in. But what you cannot do without undermining our entire system is suggest that government is only legitimate when your party is in charge. And if Democrats continue along this dangerous trajectory, if they continue to try to delegitimize the actions of a duly elected Senate majority and a duly elected president, they are the ones who will put our entire system at risk. And as an aside, if anyone wonders for a moment whether Democrats are advocating a principled position, if perhaps Democrats really think it would be best for our country to eliminate the legislative filibuster Democrats have used so often, or to expand the Supreme Court, one can simply ask whether Democrats would continue to advocate for these positions if President Trump is reelected and Republicans retain control of the Senate. Think about that one, Mr. President. I think everybody here knows what the answer to that question is, and the answer is no. Mr. President, as I said yesterday, Democrats' threats are not going to stop Republicans from carrying out our constitutional role in considering the President's nominee. One of the principal reasons that many GOP senators, myself included, ran for office in the first place was to confirm principled judges to our courts. Judges who understand that their role is to interpret the law, not make the law. And while many of my Democrat colleagues would like the courts to impose their policies when they can't push them through Congress, Republicans know that legislation should come from Congress and not from the courts. The job of judges is to interpret the law as it is written, not to impose Democrat or Republican policies from the bench. My colleagues and I were elected and reelected in part because of our commitment to confirming judges who would uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. We followed through on that commitment over the past 4 years, and we're going to keep following through by voting on the President's nominee. Democrats can bluster, they can threaten, and they can throw temper tantrums. But we will keep doing what we were sent here to do. Mr. President, I yield the floor.